The rotor blades thundered overhead as I stepped out of the helicopter, my Louboutins touching down on the freshly mowed grass of the country club. 200 faces turned toward me. 200 jaws dropped in unison. And there, right there, in a cheap polyester uniform, with a tray of champagne flutes, trembling in her manicured hands, stood my sister Victoria, the golden child, the family princess, the one who could do no wrong. Our eyes locked, hers filled with something I'd never seen before. Pure, unfiltered shock. And the dawning realization that everything had changed. You see, the last time my family saw me, I was 23, broke, and being lectured at Thanksgiving dinner about my poor life, choices. They called me reckless, irresponsible, a disappointment. But that was 6 years ago. A lot can change in 6 years, especially when you're fueled by spite and an unshakable determination to prove every single one of them wrong. If you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or made to feel like you weren't good enough, this story is for you. Hit that like button right now. Subscribe if you love a good revenge story, and buckle up, because what you're about to hear is one of the most satisfying comebacks you'll ever witness. Trust me, you don't want to miss a single second of this. Let me take you back, way back. My name is Elena, and I grew up in what everyone called the perfect family. My father, Richard, was a successful corporate attorney. My mother, Patricia, was a former beauty queen turned philanthropist who spent more time organizing charity galas than actually talking to her daughters. We lived in a sprawling colonial house in Greenwich, Connecticut, the kind with the circular driveway, the marble entryway, and the family portraits that cost more than most people's cars. Everything looked perfect from the outside, but inside there was a hierarchy, and I was at the bottom of it. Victoria, God, even her name sounds like it was designed for success, doesn't it? Victoria was born first, 2 years before me, and from the moment she could walk, she was flawless. At least, that's what everyone said. She was a straight-A student, captain of the tennis team, homecoming queen. She had this effortless grace, this ability to charm everyone in a room without even trying. Teachers loved her. Coaches adored her. And my parents? They worshipped the ground she walked on. Me? I was different. I was loud where Victoria was poised, creative where she was conventional. I got B's and C's because I was more interested in building things in our garage than memorizing formulas I'd never use again. I wore ripped jeans and band t-shirts while Victoria wore pastel cardigans and pearls. And my parents hated it. Elena, why can't you be more like your sister? That sentence, God, that sentence, was the soundtrack of my childhood. I heard it at every parent-teacher conference, every family dinner, every single time I didn't live up to their impossible standards. When Victoria got into Yale, my parents threw a party, literally. They rented out the country club, hired a live band, invited everyone they knew. There were champagne toasts and speeches about how proud they were, how Victoria was destined for greatness. When I got into a state school 2 years later, my dad glanced at the acceptance letter and said, "Well, at least you got in somewhere." Then he went back to reading his newspaper. That moment, that tiny, dismissive moment, it broke something inside me. But it also planted a seed. A dark, stubborn seed that would eventually grow into something they never saw coming. Fast forward to when I was 23. I'd graduated college with a degree in computer science. Not because my parents encouraged it, but because I was genuinely fascinated by technology and coding. I'd taken out student loans to pay for most of it myself because my parents had decided their financial support should go toward Victoria's Yale tuition and her future. I was working 2 jobs, one as a junior developer at a tech startup, another as a weekend barista, trying to scrape together rent for my tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I was building something, learning, growing. Victoria, meanwhile, had graduated from Yale and immediately landed a cushy marketing position at our father's law firm. She was living rent-free in their pool house, driving a BMW they'd bought, her as a graduation present, and planning her engagement to Bradley, a trust fund guy whose personality was as bland as unsalted crackers but whose bank account made my parents swoon. That Thanksgiving, I made the mistake of going home. I should have known better. I really should have, but some pathetic part of me still craved their approval. Still hoped that maybe they'd finally see me as more than just the family disappointment. I was so wrong. Dinner started normally enough. Turkey, stuffing, the usual small talk. Then my Aunt Carol asked what I was up to, and I made the fatal error of answering honestly. I'm actually working on something really exciting, I said, feeling a flicker of pride. I've been developing an app with a couple friends from school. It's a project management tool specifically designed for remote teams. We think there's a real market for it. Silence. My father set down his wine glass. Elena, when are you going to stop playing around with these hobbies and get a real job? I blinked. Dad, I have a real job. I'm a software developer. At a startup no one's ever heard of, my mother interrupted, her voice dripping with disapproval. Darling, those things fail 99% of the time. You're 23 years old. You need stability, benefits, a 401k. Victoria, sitting across from me in her designer blouse and perfect makeup, smiled sympathetically. Mom's right, Elena. I mean, it's great that you're passionate about this stuff, but maybe it's time to be realistic. I could talk to Dad about getting you an administrative position at the firm. Nothing fancy, but it's steady. My jaw clenched. I don't want an administrative position. I want to build something of my own. Oh, Elena. My mother actually laughed. You're not exactly business-minded, sweetheart. You barely scraped through your classes. Victoria got into Yale. She understands strategy and professionalism. You've always been more of a dreamer. The word dreamer came out like an insult, like something shameful. My father nodded in agreement. Your mother's right. You need to face reality. This app thing, it's a pipe dream. You're wasting your time and what little money you have. You're already in debt from those student loans. When are you going to grow up and make responsible choices? Something inside me snapped. Not in a dramatic, explosive way, but quietly, coldly, like a door closing and locking forever. I looked around that table, at my father's condescending expression, my mother's dismissive smile, Victoria's pitying eyes, even Bradley's smug smirk, and I made a decision. I was done seeking their approval. I was done trying to fit into their narrow definition of success. I was done being the family disappointment. I stood up, grabbed my coat, and walked out without saying another word. My mother called after me, something about being dramatic and oversensitive, but I didn't look back. As I drove away from that house, tears streaming down my face, I made a promise to myself. I would succeed. Not for them, not to fit in, but to prove, once and for all, that they were wrong about me. And I would make sure they knew it. The next 6 years were brutal. I'm not going to romanticize it. I didn't have some magical breakthrough where everything suddenly clicked into place. There were no overnight successes, no lucky breaks handed to me on a silver platter. What I had was rage and determination, and a chip on my shoulder the size of Connecticut. I threw myself into that app. My co-founders, 2 brilliant developers I'd met in college, Marcus and Priya, became my family. We worked 80-hour weeks. We survived on ramen and coffee and sheer stubborn willpower. We maxed out credit cards. We pitched to investors who rejected us over and over and over again. But slowly, painfully slowly, we started gaining traction. Our project management app, which we called Synergy, filled a gap in the market that nobody else was addressing. It was intuitive, powerful, and designed, specifically for the explosion of remote work that was starting to take over the corporate world. We got our first 1,000 users, then 10,000. Then 100,000. By year 3, we had venture capital funding. By year 4, we were profitable. By year 5, we were being featured in Forbes and TechCrunch. And by year 6, we'd sold Synergy to a major tech corporation for $280 million. My cut, after splitting with Marcus and Priya and paying back investors, $47 million. $47 million. I was 29 years old. During those 6 years, I'd stayed away from my family. I changed my phone number. I didn't go home for holidays. I didn't respond to the occasional passive-aggressive emails from my mother asking when I was going to stop being childish and come visit. I watched their lives from a distance, though. Social media made that easy. Victoria had married Bradley in an obscenely expensive wedding that my parents paid for. She'd kept her cushy marketing job at my father's firm. She posted endless photos of their perfect life, brunch with friends, weekend getaways to the Hamptons, her meticulously decorated home. But about a year ago, I started noticing cracks. The posts became less frequent. The smiles looked more forced. And then 6 months ago, Victoria posted something cryptic about new beginnings and finding herself. A little digging revealed the truth. Bradley had left her for his much younger secretary, Classic, And without Bradley's trust fund and my father's nepotism, Victoria's cushy life had evaporated. She'd lost the house, the BMW, the country club membership. She'd even lost her job at the firm. My father had quietly let her go when her marriage fell apart because apparently family loyalty only extended as far as it benefited his image. According to Facebook, Victoria was now working as a waitress at events and private parties. The irony was delicious. And that's when I found out about the family reunion. The invitation came through an old email address. I'd forgotten I'd even given them. The Harrison family reunion, celebrating 50 years of love, legacy, and togetherness. It was being held at the same country club where they'd thrown Victoria's Yale party. Of course it was. My parents loved that place. It was where they went to see and be seen, to network with other wealthy families, to maintain their pristine image of success. My first instinct was to delete the email and forget about it. But then I saw the guest list. 200 people. Extended family, family friends. Everyone who'd ever witnessed my humiliation. Everyone who'd heard my parents complain about their difficult, younger daughter. And Victoria's name was on the catering staff list. Oh, this was too perfect. I called Marcus. Remember how you said, I should splurge on something ridiculous to celebrate the acquisition? Yeah? How do you feel about helicopters? He laughed. I feel great about helicopters. I chartered a Sikorsky S-76, the same model celebrities and executives use. Sleek, powerful, and impossible to ignore. The rental alone cost $15,000 for the afternoon, but considering what I was about to do, worth every penny. I hired a stylist and bought an outfit that screamed success. A tailored white pantsuit by Alexander McQueen, 6-inch Christian Louboutin heels, and jewelry that cost more than my parents' car. I got my hair and makeup done professionally. When I looked in the mirror that morning, I barely recognized myself. I looked like power, like success, like everything they'd told me I could never be. The plan was simple. Arrive exactly 1 hour into the reunion, when everyone would be settled and comfortable, make an entrance they'd never forget, and let my mere presence do the talking. No speeches, no confrontations, just existing, thriving, succeeding. The ultimate revenge. The pilot's voice crackled through my headset. Ms. Harrison, we're approaching the landing zone. ETA 3 minutes. I looked down at the country club below. The sprawling green lawns. The white tents set up for the reunion. The tiny figures of people milling about, drinks in hand, completely unaware of what was about to happen. My heart hammered against my ribs. Not from fear, from anticipation. Take us in, I said. The helicopter descended, and I watched as heads started turning upward. People pointing, shading their eyes against the sun. Confused expressions spreading across the crowd. We touched down on the far end of the lawn. I'd specifically requested we land as close to the main tent as the pilot deemed safe and the rotor. Wash-scent napkins and tablecloths fluttering dramatically. Perfect. The pilot opened my door and I stepped out, my heels sinking slightly into the grass. The rotor blades were still spinning above me. My hair whipping around my face in that dramatic, movie star way that probably looked completely ridiculous but felt absolutely incredible. 200 people stared at me in complete silence. I pulled off my sunglasses, slowly, deliberately, and scanned the crowd. There was my father, frozen mid-conversation, his champagne glass halfway to his lips. My mother beside him, her mouth literally hanging open. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all of them staring like I just descended from another planet. And there, standing near the bar with a tray of empty glasses, was Victoria. Our eyes met across the lawn. She'd lost weight. Her face looked tired, older. The uniform she wore, black pants, white button-down, small black apron, was cheap and ill-fitting. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No jewelry, no designer clothes, no trace of the golden child who'd once ruled this family. For a split second, I saw something flash across her face. Recognition, shock, and then, slowly, humiliation. I walked toward the main tent, my heels clicking against the stone pathway. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Nobody said a word. They just stared. I reached the bar, the same bar where Victoria stood, and smiled politely. "Champagne, please," I said, my voice calm and steady. Victoria's hands were shaking as she reached for a glass. She couldn't look at me. Her face had gone completely white. "Elena?" My mother's voice cut through the silence, high-pitched and disbelieving. "Elena, is that you?" I turned, champagne glass in hand, and smiled. "Hi, Mom." Dad, sorry I'm late. Traffic was brutal. I paused, then added innocently, well, actually, no traffic at all from the air, but you know what I mean. My father's face had turned an interesting shade of purple. You came in a helicopter? Mm-hmm. I took a sip of champagne. It's chartered, obviously. I don't own one. Yet. But it seemed like the most efficient option. I'm flying to San Francisco this evening for a board meeting, so I couldn't stay long. Just wanted to pop in and say hello. A board meeting? My mother looked like she might faint. Elena, what are you? I don't understand. Oh, you haven't heard? I tilted my head, feigning surprise. I thought you kept up with these things. My company, Synergy, was acquired last year. It was in Forbes, TechCrunch. Even the Wall Street Journal ran a piece. I'm on the board of directors for the parent company now. It's been an incredible journey. Dead. Silence. You could have heard a pin drop. Aunt Carol, bless her, was the first to speak. Elena, darling, that's wonderful. I had no idea you were so successful. Why didn't your parents mention this? All eyes turned to my mother and father. My mother's mouth opened and closed like a fish. My father's jaw was so tight I thought his teeth might crack. My mother stammered. We didn't... Elena, you never told us. You never asked, I said simply, my voice pleasant but firm. You changed the locks after I left for New York. Changed your phone numbers. Made it pretty clear I wasn't welcome unless... I gave up my pipe dream and got a real job. I made air quotes with my fingers. So I did what you suggested. I got realistic. Turns out my version of realistic was a little different from yours. My father's face was stone. Elena, that's not fair. We were trying to protect you. Protect me? I laughed. Not cruelly, just genuinely amused. From what? Success? Happiness? Proving that I was capable of building something incredible? Victoria finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. Elena. I turned to look at her. Really look at her for the first time. Up close, she looked exhausted, defeated. There were dark circles under her eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. And despite everything, despite years of resentment and anger and hurt, I felt something unexpected. Pity. Hi, Victoria, I said softly. She couldn't meet my eyes. I didn't know you'd be here. Yeah, well, surprise. I paused. How have you been? Her voice cracked. I'm fine. She wasn't fine. Anyone could see that. But I wasn't going to press. This wasn't about kicking her while she was down. It never had been. Elena? Uncle Thomas pushed through the crowd, grinning widely. I heard you sold your company. That's amazing. What was the exit? I hesitated. This was the moment. The moment where I could either deflect politely or own it completely. Screw it. 280 million, I said clearly. My personal take was just over 47 million after splits and fees. The gasps were audible. 47 million? Cousin Jennifer looked like she might pass out. Oh my God, Elena, that's insane. It's really not, I shrugged. It's market rate for tech acquisitions right now. We had strong user growth, solid revenue, and 3 competing offers. We went with the best one. I said it so casually, like 47. $1 million was just normal. Because in my world now, it kinda was. My father finally found his voice. Elena, I don't understand. How did we not know about any of this? I met his eyes, really met them, for the first time in 6 years. Because you never believed in me. Because you decided when I was 12 years old that Victoria was the golden child. And I was the disappointment. And nothing I did would ever change that narrative. So I stopped trying to change it. I just left. And I built a life without you. Silence again. But this time it was different, heavier. My mother's eyes were filling with tears. Elena, sweetheart, we never meant to make you feel... Yes, you did. My voice wasn't angry. Just factual. You absolutely did. And that's okay. Really. Because it pushed me to work harder than I ever would have otherwise. So in a weird way, I should probably thank you. I set down my champagne glass and checked my watch. I actually need to get going. The pilot's on a schedule. But it was interesting seeing everyone again. I started to walk away, then paused and turned back to Victoria. She was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face as she gripped her empty serving tray. Victoria, I said quietly, stepping closer so only she could hear. I'm sorry about Bradley, and the job, and everything. I really am. She looked up at me, shocked. You're sorry? Elena, I was horrible to you. You were what they wanted you to be, I interrupted gently. Just like I was what they didn't want. But we're not kids anymore. We don't have to keep playing those roles. I reached into my clutch and pulled out a business card. If you ever want to talk, or if you need help, or if you just want to grab coffee and not talk about family drama, call me. She took the card with shaking hands, staring at it like it might disappear. Oh, and Victoria? I smiled. A real smile, not a vindictive one. You were never the problem. They were. I walked back to the helicopter without looking back. The pilot was waiting, and as I climbed inside and buckled my harness, I felt lighter, like I'd been carrying a weight for 6 years and had finally set it down. As we lifted off, I looked down one last time. The entire reunion was still standing there, watching. My mother was being comforted by several relatives. My father looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Victoria was sitting on a bench, my card still clutched in her hand. And as we climbed higher and the country club shrank to the size of a postage stamp below us, I realized something important. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need their validation or their apologies or their pride. I'd spent 6 years building a life I was proud of, a life I loved, a life where I was surrounded by people who valued me for who I actually was, not who they wanted me to be. The revenge, the helicopter, the entrance, the shock on their faces, that was just a bonus. The icing on a cake I'd spent 6 years baking from scratch. The real victory? It wasn't the money or the success or the company. It was knowing that I'd proven, to myself, first and foremost, that I was never the disappointment they made me feel like. I was the one who got away. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about making someone suffer. It's about succeeding so completely, so undeniably, that their opinion of you becomes irrelevant. It's about proving, not to them, but to yourself, that you were always capable of more than they could see. And honestly, that's the sweetest victory of all. If this story gave you chills, absolutely smash that like button right now. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever been underestimated by someone? What did you do to prove them wrong? And of course, subscribe if you want more stories like this. Revenge tales, justice served cold, and people finally getting exactly what they deserve. I'll see you in the next one.